In 1462, the most powerful man on earth, Sultan Mehmed the Conqueror, marched into the mountains of Romania to crush a rebellious prince. He brought 60,000 elite soldiers and the world's heaviest cannons. But he didn't find an army waiting for him. He found a nightmare. This is the true story of when the Ottoman Empire met the real-life Dracula and almost lost its head. To understand this war, you have to understand the men. Vlad Dracula and the Sultan weren't strangers. They were raised together. As a boy, Vlad was a royal hostage in the Ottoman court. He learned their language, their religion, and, most importantly, their military secrets. But while the Sultan was building an empire, Vlad was building a grudge. When Vlad became the Prince of Wallachia and refused to pay his taxes, he didn't just say no. He nailed the turbans of the Sultan's envoys to their skulls. The message was sent. The war was on. As Mehmed's massive army crossed the Danube, they expected a glorious battle. Instead, they got total war. Vlad employed a scorched earth policy. He burned his own villages, poisoned his own wells, and even used biological warfare. He took victims of the bubonic plague and leprosy, dressed them in Ottoman clothes, and sent them to wander into the Turkish camps. By the time the Sultan reached the capital, his men were starving, diseased, and hallucinating from heat and thirst. June 17, 1462. Midnight. Vlad knew he couldn't win in the sun, so he attacked in the dark. Using his perfect Turkish to blend in, Vlad and 3,000 cavalrymen ghosted into the center of the Ottoman camp. It was a bloodbath. In the pitch black, Ottoman soldiers couldn't tell who was who. They began slaughtering their own comrades. Vlad's goal was simple: kill the Sultan in his tent and end the war in one stroke. He slashed through the tents of the Grand Viziers, leaving a trail of bodies. He was inches away from the Sultan's throat. But Vlad made one fatal mistake. He hit the wrong tent. Behind him, the Sultan's personal guard, the legendary Janissaries, recovered. They didn't panic. They formed a wall of steel around Mehmed, chained their legs together so no man could retreat, and opened fire with their matchlock muskets. The sound of the volleys broke the silence of the night. Realizing the Sultan was protected by an unbreakable human shield, Vlad was forced to retreat into the shadows of the Carpathian Mountains. The next morning, Mehmed finally reached the capital, Targovishte. But there was no victory parade. Instead, he found the Forest of the Impaled. 20,000 Ottoman prisoners and civilians, stretching for 3 kilometers, rotting on wooden stakes. Even the conqueror of Constantinople was physically sickened. He turned his army around and left. He had won the land, but Vlad had won the soul of the war. Vlad Dracula would eventually be captured, but his legend as the only man who truly terrified the Sultan would live on forever. Tactically, the Ottoman. Psychologically, Dracula created a horror story that lasted 500 years.